Welcome to the Department Chair Leadership Podcast, where the goal is to improve organizations and serve students one leader at a time. I'm your host, Dr. Chris Jochum. If you're a department chair in higher education or any type of educational leader, and you want to improve yourself to better serve and influence those you lead, you've come to the right place. Because the best way to improve an organization is to improve its leader. Let's get started. Welcome back, friends, and thank you for taking time to invest in yourself and those you serve by focusing on your leadership development. Today, we're going to dive into part 2 of why become a department chair. If you haven't had a chance to listen to part 1, I would encourage you to do that. It may seem a bit counterintuitive, but part 1, and we will recap that real quick, explores the chair role from the foolish 4, why you shouldn't do it. There are some common assumptions about the role, maybe some common reasons that perhaps with the best of intentions people enter any leadership role, but certainly that of the department chair in higher education. And so we started in part 1 with those. And just to recap, the foolish 4 reasons why you should not become a department chair is because no one else wanted it, including you. Power and control, the money, and entitlement. And if you want to know more, you can listen to part 1. But today we're going to finish this up and now dive into why you should be a department chair. As I've often said, it is one of the most rewarding leadership jobs on the campus. At the same time, it is very, very challenging. You are literally standing at the crossroads of faculty, of students, of upper administration, stakeholders. Depending upon the academic content that you're in, you might work with industry, you might have accreditation bodies. So in some days you will feel like you're standing in the middle of a busy intersection, but if pursued for the right reasons, with a servant leader mindset, it can be very, very rewarding. So what I would like to do is today focus on 5 primary questions. And yes, it is my goal to walk you through the reasons that you should look at becoming a chair. But I think it would be very useful and helpful to do this through posing some questions. So let's jump into this. The first one, are you willing to start over and are you willing to learn? You are obviously very, very qualified, probably have great things on your CV, probably won some awards, are well known in your field for scholarship, teaching, known in your profession for service. And while those are necessary to be an effective chair, in and of themselves, they aren't sufficient. Those are now part of the pie, but it's not everything that contributes to being a successful chair. So are you willing to learn and start over? What I mean by that is leading others, being a chair of your department. While it does have some nuances because of the institution you're at, the academic area, yes, those all play into it. But above all that, you are now in the people business. Leadership and all that comes with it, meaning the perks and the problems and everything in between, is your new area of expertise. And obviously, you're all very intelligent. You hold advanced degrees. You know how to learn. You know how to research something, how to pursue the facts and analyze and think critically. So my challenge for you is, if you are willing to dive into leadership as your new area of expertise, pursue it as though you are starting another graduate degree in this. Or heck, pretend maybe you do, but let's just say that you have to prepare a semester-long class in effective chair leadership. How would you go about that? Well, you're probably going to research. You're going to ask people questions. One thing that I found very helpful in my preparation, which is why I was inspired and had, more importantly, some trusted friends and colleagues kind of nudge me into starting this podcast is you can listen to podcasts. You can read books or listen to books, as a lot of people are prone to do now, because obviously it's a lot safer if you're in the car or running on the treadmill. So are you willing to learn? And if so, dive into it as if you were teaching a new class or starting a new degree. One way within this, if you want to kind of gauge where you're at, I do believe leaders can be trained. And I do think, though, that we all enter this world. Some of us are more inclined or gifted or talented in some areas than others, but it doesn't mean that we can't, with the right mindset and training, we can't learn. And so leadership is no different. One way that I encourage people to find their strengths, if they're a little too humble to admit it, is in what areas you're naturally intuitive. I know you're naturally intuitive in the areas of your research and your teaching, but to what extent are you intuitive in areas that involve research? For example, solving people problems, addressing conflict. Think about that, because that might indicate the gap, the area to which, or some subjects, if you will, that you need to brush up on. And then the other thing that I've always used as an example to kind of gauge where you're at, I think most of us have seen TED Talks. I hope you have. If you haven't, I'd encourage you to. That's a great way to learn. But if I were to come to you and say, hey, in about half an hour, you're going to get up and you're going to give your TED Talk, which is typically 15 to 20 minutes. You might have a visual behind you, but they're just designed for one person to just really dive really deeply into something that they're passionate about in a relatively short amount of time. If I said you have to get up and give your leadership TED Talk, your being an effective department chair TED Talk, some of the areas that you might pull out your phone and look up or Google or call somebody or text somebody, those might also indicate some areas that you want to lean into and brush up on as a leader. So the first question for why become a department chair, you've identified that you're not going into it for the foolish four. The next thing I'm going to say is, are you doing it for the right reasons? Are you willing to start over? If yes, great. Here are some examples and some advice. Number 2, how do you define leadership? And along that, and I think this goes together, what is your leadership philosophy? And it's okay if you've never thought of this, but I think we all have this. Heck, for most of our adult lives, we've been subject to leadership or lack thereof from the very first time we had a job, i.e. a boss, till now. But really dive into that. What is your personal framework for leadership? How do you define that? I define leadership as influence through service, courage, character, and relationships. What is your definition? What is your framework for leadership? Because you're going to need that, certainly on the difficult days, and there will be difficult days as a department chair. Think about how it's evolved. Who's in your leadership or your mentoring network? So under that, how do you define it? What's your philosophy? Who do you have or not have that has contributed to that? And if you don't have a great leadership network, I would encourage you to do that. And you don't have to do that directly. You can start off by reading authors that you've never read before, that are either in the higher ed space or outside of it. There's a lot of great stuff out there. Listening to podcasts. Social media can be used for really good things and some not so great things, but I can tell you in my personal journey and professional development, things such as Twitter or X, whatever it is called now, you can develop your personal learning network by reaching out or just searching for leaders across multiple industries. And there are some great follows out there that would really guide you, give you daily words of wisdom, and then also suggest other avenues such as things to read or to look into. The third question, how are you with people? Now, obviously, you're very successful as a faculty member, so I'm sure you are pretty good with people. But when you become a leader, when you become a department chair, it enhances that. And not only do you interact with and solve people problems on a much higher level, the consequences and the benefits of either doing that correctly or incorrectly are also a lot more significant. So please know that you don't have to be an extrovert to be a great leader. So this isn't about, well, I identify as an introvert, I identify as an extrovert. It's not about that. It's how do you feel interacting with people? Do you really enjoy just getting to know people? Are you willing to take that extra step and ask them questions, obviously within within professional boundaries, but it's okay within reason to get to know certainly your people's interests. What do they like to research? What do they like to teach? Where do they sit? You might have folks that serve on some pretty high profile boards. That's really important to know. What is your relationship pattern? And while you can certainly reflect on your personal relationships, if you choose to, certainly reflect on your professional relationship pattern. So in your professional career, how have most relationships gone? Even though nobody's perfect, including ourselves, do you typically, when you have left jobs, do you typically end on good terms with your leadership, with your colleagues? Is there a pattern that you continue to have a strong relationship with people? Is it sometimes maybe somewhat of a roller coaster? There's good and there's bad. None of those in and of themselves are bad, but I promise you will want to step back and look at that. And in the future, we'll dig into this a little deeper. And then the other thing with people, and this could be a topic on its own, but are you willing to be vulnerable? Vulnerability is a leader's superpower. I'm going to give you an author right now to read, to follow, to watch videos. If you're not familiar with Brené Brown's work, please look her up. Wonderful researcher who has really affected and influenced a number, probably millions of people throughout the world. And she's not hard to find. And so her work and research on vulnerability, which is tied to leadership, has been very helpful to me, and I know it'll help you if you haven't read that. So how are you with people? What's your people pattern? You're in the people business, and are you willing to be vulnerable? So to recap real quick here, are you willing to start over? Are you willing to learn? Number 2, how do you define leadership? What's your leadership philosophy? Number 3, how are you with people? The fourth one out of 5 questions that I really encourage everyone, once you know you're in it for the right reasons, or not pursuing it for the wrong reasons, I guess you could say, and this is a biggie, are you comfortable with conflict? Now, if you're normal, you're going to say no, and I'm giving you permission to say no. That's okay. But really what I'm asking is, are you willing to lean in and address conflict? Because in some ways, you're going to have some form of conflict every day. And it doesn't mean it's an all-out dumpster fire. Hopefully those won't happen every day. I can promise you, though, to use a fire analogy, if something in a dumpster is just kind of smoldering and we get right on top of it, it's pretty easy to put it out and there's no more damage. You ignore that, listen, it's not going to go away. And problems, ignoring them, while it is a response, it's not the correct response. So are you willing to address conflict? And more importantly, are you willing to learn, give yourself the grace to make mistakes and continue to learn to get better? The first time we do anything over the course of our life, even if the first time's pretty good, given enough time, we'll go back and look at that and say, wow, that I could have done a lot better. But the good news is I really see some growth. So while I'm sure we've all dealt with professional conflict in our professor roles, the level that you're going to deal with is much greater. And quite frankly, to take a positive mindset, sometimes you're going to get some head scratchers and you're just going to say, you can't make this up. And you can't. But you can get better at conflict, and we will talk about that in subsequent episodes. But you at least need to be willing to say, yes, I'm willing to do this. I'm willing to be uncomfortable to serve others. I'm willing to make the hard decisions. If you know that you're just the type of human that conflict, you hate it, I'm not saying you can't be a chair. We're just going to have to work on that. And then the fifth and final question. We've talked about the foolish four. Don't do it only for the money. So to bounce off of that one as a positive question, but you need to ask yourself this: can you afford to not be the chair? And what I mean by this is, are you willing to accept the fact that perhaps doing your job with integrity, with courage, with honesty, depending upon the situation, depending upon the prevailing culture that you're in, and you name the level, it could be within your college, your unit, university, whatever, can you afford to not be the chair? And what I mean by that is, can you afford to step aside? Another way that I've asked people, this is, are you willing to set boundaries? Are you willing to say, there are some lines I will not cross, and if that means either resigning from a leadership position or, unfortunately, being dismissed, we hope that doesn't happen. But here's the thing. I think we all know our boundaries, and to use a very, very extreme example, obviously, none of us would knowingly break a federal law to stay in the good graces of somebody that controls our leadership job. And so that's what I mean by, can you afford to not do the job? To some extent, I hope you can say, yes, I really want the job. I love the job. I hope to do it for as long as they'll allow me to do it. I really think I can make a difference. But if in the back of your mind you don't realize, but yes, I am willing to take that exit if I need to. Because the flip side to that, and I think we've all interacted with folks in our careers in higher education, the flip side to that is you can take some really great, well-intentioned people that are in leadership roles, and if they get to the point to where they just feel as though they cannot do anything else, I think sometimes it makes it a little too maybe easy or tempting for them to, push a boundary here, or maybe look the other way on something that you otherwise would have not gone into. And so trust me, by giving yourself the ability to say, yeah, I want the job, but I can afford not to do it. So to recap here, my goal the first two episodes was to base this upon some mentoring and coaching I've already done over the years, and some of my research in my book, and as well as some presentations. These are common questions. Why should I become a chair? Or I just found out I have to and I'm not sure. So first, make sure we're not going into it for the foolish four. We're not just doing it because no one else wanted it, including me. I'm not doing this just because I want to have some false sense of power and control. I'm not doing it only for the money, although you do need to be compensated for your time. Remember, the only thing more expensive than a good leader is a bad one, and none of us are entitled to a leadership job. The skills it takes to be a great leader in some ways are very different than what was required to be a successful tenure faculty member. And so now, to put a bow on part two, the 5 questions that I posed, that I really would like you to dig into is, are you willing to start over? Are you willing to learn about leadership? It's your new area of expertise. How do you define leadership? What's your philosophy? How are you with people? Are you comfortable with conflict, or at least willing to acknowledge what you are uncomfortable with and learn? And then, can you afford to not do the job? Are you willing to set boundaries and define and establish and personify your character by saying, you know what, there are just some places and things that I just won't do. I hope that never happens. I would guess it's very rare, but I promise you that's part of building a really firm foundation as a leader. So friends, as always, I hope this has helped you. I thank you for joining me on the Department Chair Leadership Podcast. I wish you well, and I'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to the Department Chair Leadership Podcast. If you want to learn more about my leadership philosophy and how to be an effective chair, please consider my book, The Department Chair, A Practical Guide to Effective Leadership. You can find this and learn more about me by going to cjleadership.com. Also, please be sure to like this podcast, leave a review, and share with your colleagues. Thanks again for improving your organization and those you serve by improving yourself. Take care.